support, level prayers, or mainly western part of Europe. So like those who really believe that politics was destroy this opportunity. It's really true. That's hope that it was. That's not me, and it was all.
That is totally subservient to them. You could actually look this up, and one thing I wish you can be doing is maybe while I'm speaking, you can just open your Yandex browser and be checking out the things I'm saying.
62, something like that. And I did, and I saw that my phone, even till now, is for
Open Yandex, then
everything. So my
type Yuval Noah on creating minds and bodies,
failed so
and to bring out the video. Bring it out. You may not see it on Google. Google sanctions all those kind of things, but you will see the video where Yuval Noah said it himself, and he said, "What are we going to do with these useless people?" Because I think I even made a tweet on it once, and I think I posted a video there. So this is the World Economic Forum that all presidents go to attend, and they receive instructions on their economy. This is the World Economic Forum that our people go to. Policymakers go there. Global policymakers go to these places. And the COVID protocol basically was to initiate the fourth industrial revolution. Now, you can also look this up now. Look for a document called Scenarios of the Future by Rockefeller Foundation. Scenarios for the Future. Now, this document was written in 2010, but it perfectly predicted the COVID pandemic. It predicted the pandemic. And if you look at that document, you would not miss where it talked about the totalitarian government. So the reason why I'm saying this is because you cannot separate the concept of totalitarianism from the agenda that these guys have for the world. Your voice is a problem. Your ability to say no is actually what they are trying to do away with. You know, as crazy as it sounds, it's actually what they have in the offing. So before I go too far, I was talking about global governance. I know I may not finish this tonight, but at least we're going to start from it. We'll start it, and wherever we get to, maybe another time, I'll come back to it, and then we'll talk about it. But it's important that we look at the history of what is going on. All right, so I would start global governance by talking about the League of Nations from 1900 to 1924. And basically during that period, and it's important. Please follow me on this because we're headed somewhere. So, of course, the competition for world dominance was fierce in the first quarter of the 20th century. New ideas were emerging to fill the vacuum created by the crumbling British Empire, and by the end of that's towards the end of the colonial era. And at the turn of the century, America, even though they were hardly a world leader, they were rapidly expanding. Of course, the economic and technological advancements were attracting world interest. At the other side of the world, you had, Russia under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, and they had also begun their industrialization era, you know. So America on this side was, the American dream had started booming, they were busy earning a living to pay much attention to what was happening in Russia. And Russia at that time was forming the principles of communism, as at 1903. So while Russia was forming the principles of communism, America was, you know, that same year, that same period was when the Wright brothers made their historic flight. Of course, the whole world's attention rather, looked into America. The first automobile trip across US was completed. The US government ratified the Panama Canal Treaty. The Congress created the Federal Reserve System in 1913. And of course, these things are happening in America. So American industrialization was booming, while at the other side, Russia was forming communism. Now, this is actually where I'm going to. The Federal Reserve, like we all know, is not a property of the United States of America. It's private property. It's owned by the Rockefeller and Rothschild, you know. And there was this guy who was an advisor to the president of America as a then, who was Wilson. The guy's name was House. His name was Mandel House. This guy is one of those who began creating the vision of a one world government and injecting it into the mind of the then American president. This guy was like an Ahithophel, very smart guy, you know. So this guy was actually responsible for putting together an elite circle of friends known as the Inquiry. Among these friends, you had Paul Warburg, you had J.P. Morgan, the popular J.P. Morgan, yes. Then you had John D. Rockefeller, and then you had John W. Davis. Now, these guys called the Inquiry, they are actually the founding fathers of the Council of Foreign Relations. Now, you can't talk about global governance even till today without looking into the history of the Council of Foreign Relations. Now, um, there was an event that held in Paris, the Paris Convention of 1919, and the main purpose of that Paris Convention in 1919 was to look at how to broker power from America and also at the same time from Europe. And two organizations were created, and all these things were engineered by this guy House and some other guys from Europe. And it was actually like a post-war peace negotiations, from World War One. These two organizations that were created, the first was called the Royal Institute of International Affairs, aka Chatham House, what you know today as Chatham House. And then the second one, of course, is the Council of Foreign Relations. Now, the Council of Foreign Relations is from America, and Chatham House was from Europe. But these organizations are perfect Siamese twins. They were supposed to do exactly the same thing from America and also from Europe. And the purpose was to create a stream of scholarly literature to promote the benefits of a world government and attract a membership of rich intellectuals who could influence the direction of foreign policy in America and also from the Europe. So the CFR was supported by the world's richest people as at that time. And even till today, the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, you need to look them up. They are the most powerful organization from America. They are not loud, but American foreign policy is controlled by the CFR. And the US delegation to the founding conference of the United Nations, US, there were 63 people that were sent from the US. 47 of them were from the Council of Foreign Relations. So the Council of Foreign Relations, had an agenda, of course, with their twin on the other side, the Chatham House. They had an agenda to control the world with the same policies coming from America and also coming from um, Europe at the same time. The Council of Foreign Relations controlled the FDR, controlled controlled America basically. Everything in America controlled it. And even the process of creating the United Nations, it was orchestrated by the same guys in the Council of Foreign Relations. And these guys are actually not loyal to America. They've been loyal to the agenda of controlling the world. So you see, when you see their children, their descendants in the American Democrats opening their borders, bringing in, people from all around. Same thing happening in America, was also happening in Europe, where they were, you know, lodging illegal immigrants in five-star hotels, diluting their population. It's because originally they don't believe in nationalism as a principle. People who possess the ideology of global governance, you know. So yeah. Um, Now, when America started looking into the politics of creating the United Nations, the Senate in America, actually, the person was he was Senator Barry Goldwater. He said that America's choice to join the United Nations hinged on the fact that in no sense will the United Nations form a world government, and that neither the Senate nor the American people needed to be concerned that the United Nations or any of its agencies would interfere with the sovereignty of United States or with their domestic affairs. And of course, the UN guys were like, "Oh, no, 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 we're not going to interfere with um, the sovereignty of America. It's not going to affect the American people." They said all that and what have you. Well, guess what? 5 years later, in front of the same Senate, the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, James Warburg, one of the pioneering members of the Council of Foreign Relations, you know what he said? He said it in the American Senate. He said, "We shall have world government, whether or not you like it, by conquest or by consent." That was what he said. And the reason why I'm mentioning these people's names and talking about these people like this is so that you understand the ideologies that their children today are pursuing. And they have so much pressure and funding behind some of the things that's currently going on. Now, I think I would, I'll stop on the historical account when I'm done talking about this, and I'll come to the present. Now, the ink on the UN Charter had not even dried up when the Charter for UNESCO, and this is actually where I'm going to, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, that's UNESCO, it was presented in London. Now, UNESCO, hmm, the first Director General of UNESCO, his name was Julian Huxley. And that guy was the Vice President of the Eugenics Society as at that time. And the guy had principles, strong principles of genocide. Then this guy, the first Director General of UNESCO, and I want to read something he said about UNESCO in a document called UNESCO, The Purpose and Philosophy. He said, even though it is quite true that any radical eugenics policy will be for many years politically and psychologically impossible, it will be important for UNESCO to see that the eugenics problem is examined with the greatest care and that the public mind is informed of the issues at stake, so that much that now which is unthinkable may at least become thinkable in the future. What I'm trying to say there is very simple. I was trying to say that has at their generation, 1945, when they were creating UNESCO, it is impossible for their ideologies of genocide to become accepted and mainstream. It will be impossible for them to have organizations that will actually support the mass extermination of people through food, through drugs, through whatever it is, through groceries. He said, as at that generation, it will be impossible for them to actually make it happen. It's unthinkable at that time. He now said, but the main purpose of UNESCO will be to ensure that what is currently unthinkable has at their generation will become thinkable in future. And UNESCO is the education board of the whole world. In other words, most of the curriculum that we have in our institutions today, they are ratified, certified by UNESCO, an organization that started for the sole purpose of creating a type of education that will ensure that we have a generation of people who will be killing people through their practice. Because that's what he said. A generation that would accept policies on eugenics. Now, these guys, now all these guys, the CFR guys and the Chatham guys, this global governance people, they are all students of Thomas Malthus. Thomas Malthus was an economist who gave an economic theory in 1798 that the world is getting to a point where it will be unable to sustain itself if nothing is done to check population growth. So he actually promoted a theory, the Malthus theory, that if nothing is done to control the world's population, it will exceed the carrying capacity. So at a point, economic principles need to be developed to control human population. So this is what many of these guys hold on to, Thomas Malthus. So now here's he saying it that what is unthinkable as his generation will become thinkable sometime in future. So UNESCO's primary function was set in its charter. UNESCO was created to construct a worldwide education program to prepare the world for global governance. Uh, hmm, just a second. Yeah, so let me read something else Julian Huxley said. 1 second. Okay, let me read what um, UNESCO said in a meeting. An official in UNESCO said in a meeting in 1946. Because if you're wondering why we have doctors today who are believing that sodium fluoride is the best thing